Okay, so there's a little bit of functionality that I kind of held off on in the Sweep Minds method, and it's this. Let me just click on a spot here and see how it opened up a whole big area instead of just one local spot. That's because if I click on a space that has 0 mines beside it, uh, what the original Minesweeper game did was sort of automatically click all the spaces around that spot for you. Okay, so this is in my working version. Now, if I run the version that we're working on currently, if I click on a button that has 0 mines, it's going to show me, okay, that wasn't 0, that was 3, 2, 2. Give me a 0. There's a 0. It's going to show me that there's 0 here, but not open the whole area up yet. Now, if there's 0 mines beside this space, I automatically know that I can go to every spot beside here and freely click every one of those spots. And now there's also 0 beside that, so I can automatically go to all the spaces around that, and 0 beside that one, so I can go to all the spaces there, and 0 beside these ones, and 0 beside this one, so I can click all those. And so you could really, like, for free, get a whole lot of spaces. But we could have that run through the code rather than me having to click on every single spot. And it's not even all that difficult to implement because I already have this method called sweep mines, right? Basically, all I want to do is if I look at a particular spot and it has 0 mines on it, so I'm going to add some code in here. If we're looking at a particular place, if the mine field at column and row, the spot we were asked to sweep, is equal to 0, so there's 0 mines beside it, then with code, just please go and sweep all those spots around it. But I have a method that sweeps a spot. It's called sweep mines. And I would just like to sweep the mines at, for example, column -1, column -1, and row -1. And then I would like to sweep the mines at column -1. Let's try to space that nicely. Column -1 and the same row. Don't change the row this time. And I would like to sweep the mines. I'm just going to copy and paste here. At column -1, row +1. And I would also like to do that. Copy all 3 of those. I'd like to do that at column +1. Same 3 things. And I'd also like to do it at the same column, row -1. I don't need to do the same column, the same row, and the same column, row +1. Now, I know what you're sort of thinking, right? Wait a second. I can use the sweep mines method from within the sweep mines method. Yes, you can. That's called using a recursive method, a method that calls itself. We term that a recursive method. There's a few catches, though. You have to make sure somehow that this method is going to end. And I also need to make sure that I'm not going to accidentally go outside the array boundaries. Because if I do that, it's going to cause a crash, and that's not good. I don't want that to happen. And when I say that you have to make sure this method is going to end somehow, what I mean is that it's going to actually stop making recursive calls. So there's a little bit of a trick in the Minesweeper where if I run this, I'm not going to try to click on any of the buttons because it is going to crash right now, but just want to have this on screen for demonstration purposes. If I clicked on this particular space and it was a 0, then that would try to go to column -1, so the spot 1 over, and row -1, one above it. It would click that space, and it would click this space. Now, when it clicks on that space, if this one's a 0 as well, it'll go back to the one that I originally clicked on and try to click on it again. And I would wind up with this infinite loop going back and forth between these two, unless I create some sort of catch, some sort of stopping condition that's going to make that recursive call back and forth stop eventually somehow. Now, what's going to be our catch to say stop sweeping the mines somewhere along the line? How are we going to know to stop doing it? Well, right now, when I do sweep a spot, I disable the button. So one thing I could do is check to see before I even bother to try to sweep it, if minefield buttons, not row column, column row dot is disabled. If it is disabled, then I've already swept here and I shouldn't sweep again. So I just return. I just stop the method right there. Also, if it has a flag on it, I don't want to sweep that. I want to return. So if minefield buttons column and row text, remember this is my hack for putting flags down. If the text equals capital F, then there's a flag on that spot. I don't want to sweep that. I want to return. Before I do even either one of those tests, I got to make sure that the column and the row that I were given are both in bounds, right? I don't want to have an array out of bounds exception. So I'm going to check to make sure is column greater than or equal to 0. Make sure that it's above the lowest bound of the array. And is column less than how many columns there is in the entire array. I'm actually going to write that the other way around. Is it less than 0 or greater than the number of columns in the entire field? Like, am I trying to test column 16 or column -1? If either one of those is the case, no, just return. Okay, how would that happen if I was testing a spot near the edge and then I tried to sweep column -1? If I was already at column 0, I would be trying to sweep column -1. Well, that's not going to work. So just stop and return from the method if that's the case. And then the other one would be if row is less than 0 or row is greater than how many rows there is in the entire field. Well, if you're trying to sweep outside of the rows, just return. And so if any one of those conditions happens to come up, then you're trying to sweep a spot you shouldn't be trying to sweep. And so we just return from the method without actually doing anything. Now, if we pass all those if conditions without returning, then it's a spot that hasn't been swept yet, and we should actually sweep it. Now, visually for Minecraft, visually for Minesweeper, it didn't always write a 0 into spaces that weren't touching any mines. So I'm going to also implement that right at the same time. I'm going to check before I write anything on the button to make sure that there's actually something to write. So if it's not equal to 0, then write that onto the button. Otherwise, just disable the button. And while we're at it, if I'm putting something on the button, it wouldn't be a flag, it'd be a number. But I want to make sure that I see that number. So I'm just going to set my content display, just in case it for some reason got switched into graphic mode. Make sure it's on text mode when I'm displaying that number. And so now if I run this, I should wind up with a Minesweeper application that if I click on a 0, all of the open spaces pop open. Now I seem to have a little bit of a problem. I don't think I put them all in the right spot. Let me go back and check. All right, now this was a bit of a pain to track down, but one eternity later, I actually did find my error. If I look at the column being greater than the number of columns in the entire field, that would allow column to be equal to the number of columns, and that's an array index out of bounds. That's actually the error that I got, although I didn't notice it at first. So if I just run this again and I hit a mine, I've actually been having some trouble doing that. I keep hitting mines, so to make my chances of hitting a mine much, much lower, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to edit this constant down to 3. There'll only be 3 mines in the entire field now instead of 30, so I'll have a very low chance of hitting one. There we go. Now you can see it immediately went up, 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 and clicked on all those spaces, and it was working its way to the left. When it started to work its way back to the right, that's where I got this error, and the error was indeed array index out of bounds. It happened on line 141 right here as soon as I tried to test the array, because row became equal to 15, and it can't be equal to 15, it has to be less than 15. So I just needed this to be greater than or equal to, and this one to be greater than or equal to. Now if I run it, I'm going to have a run that doesn't, I still only going to have 3 mines, but it will all work out perfectly. All right, 1 mine, 2 mine, there's the third one. If I click on there, I even get the victory message. You cleared all the mines, well done.